Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. When Earth's Armada appeared, even the strongest empires fell silent. The silence of space was shattered when the Vengeance, Earth's first fully armed interstellar battleship, emerged from the void. It wasn't sleek like the ships of the Galactic Council. It wasn't adorned with elegant curves or delicate energy sails. No, the Vengeance was a brutal, towering beast of steel and fury, a testament to humanity's raw will to survive. The moment its shadow stretched across the galaxy, the once powerful alien empires shuddered. They had underestimated humanity. They had assumed Earth was weak, that its people were too fractured, too primitive to be a threat. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had attacked, and humanity had responded. Admiral Elias Carter stood on the bridge, eyes locked onto the holographic display before him. His face was hardened by years of war, the deep lines on his forehead telling the story of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Around him, the officers of the Vengeance moved with precision, efficient, disciplined, ready. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Status report," Carter commanded. "All weapons primed, shields at full power," Lieutenant Hayes responded. Her voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable edge to it, anticipation. The display zoomed in, revealing an armada of ships belonging to the Zalari Dominion, one of the most powerful factions in the known galaxy. They had ruled through fear, their fleets conquering weaker species with ruthless efficiency. Until now. "They're holding position, sir," Hayes said. "Scans indicate heavy armament, but they're hesitating." Carter allowed himself the ghost of a smirk. The mighty Zalari, hesitating before a single human warship. They had good reason. The Vengeance was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It didn't rely on delicate energy weapons or sophisticated shield harmonics. No, Earth had built something far simpler, something far deadlier. The Vengeance carried kinetic rail guns the size of city blocks, capable of firing projectiles at near-light speed. It was lined with layers of ablative armor that could withstand anything short of a direct supernova. And hidden deep within its hull was the true horror, a weapon so devastating that it had been classified as humanity's final option, a weapon that could crack a planet in half. The Zalari command ship hailed them. A shimmering image of Lord High Warden Arvel appeared, his reptilian features twitching with barely concealed rage. "Human," Arvel hissed, "you dare bring your war machine into our domain?" Carter stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. "I dare," he said simply. "You massacred one of our colonies. You thought we wouldn't retaliate?" Arvel's tongue flicked out in agitation. That was a warning. Humanity was to know its place. Carter's expression darkened. "And this is our answer." There was a beat of silence, then Arvel laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You truly believe that one ship will stand against an empire?" Carter tilted his head slightly. "Your empire seems nervous." Arvel's scales rippled, a sign of discomfort. He knew, they all knew. The Galactic Council had tried to keep it quiet, but rumors had spread, whispers of a battle at the edge of the Orion Arm where a single Earth destroyer had obliterated a Zalari fleet. They had underestimated humanity's war technology before. They wouldn't make that mistake again. "You don't belong in this galaxy, human," Arvel snarled. "Leave now, and we will allow your species to exist under our watchful eye." Carter leaned forward, his voice turning cold. "No." Then he gave the order, "Fire." The first shot from the Vengeance tore through the void like a vengeful god's fist. A hyper-accelerated tungsten slug ripped through the lead Zalari battleship, shearing through shields and armor as if they were paper. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, and in that moment, the Zalari fleet realized the truth: humanity wasn't weak, humanity wasn't afraid. Humanity had come to claim its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The moment the first Zalari battleship detonated, the battlefield erupted into chaos. The Zalari fleet, so accustomed to instilling fear in lesser species, suddenly found themselves facing a nightmare beyond their comprehension. Admiral Carter stood firm, his hands steady behind his back as he watched the battlefield unfold on the holographic display. The Zalari had numbers, dozens of capital ships supported by hundreds of fighters, but numbers didn't matter when their weapons barely scratched the armor of the Vengeance. Enemy return fire incoming, Lieutenant Hayes reported, her fingers dancing across the console. Brace for impact, Carter ordered, though he knew their ship could take it. The Zalari ships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, streaks of blue and violet lancing through the void. The shields of the Vengeance flared as they absorbed the onslaught, but they held strong. Unlike the delicate energy barriers used by the Galactic Council ships, human shielding was layered, reinforced, and built for endurance. Even as the Zalari pounded them with firepower that could reduce other warships to scrap, the Vengeance refused to yield. Minimal shield degradation, Hayes confirmed. Hull integrity at 100%. Carter allowed himself a small nod. Good. Then, return fire. The ship's massive rail guns thundered again, launching another volley of hyper-accelerated slugs. The Zalari ships scrambled to evade, but it was too late. Two more battleships were torn apart as the unstoppable projectiles turned them into fireballs. The surviving ships broke formation, confusion spreading among their ranks. "Sir," Commander Patel spoke up from the tactical station, "we're picking up multiple distress signals from the Zalari fleet. They're calling for reinforcements." Carter's eyes narrowed. Of course they were. The Zalari had grown complacent over centuries of dominance, but they weren't fools. They knew they couldn't face the Vengeance alone. The real battle was about to begin. "Time frame?" he asked. "Estimates suggest their nearest reinforcements are 30 minutes out. Then we have 30 minutes to teach them a lesson." The order was given, and the Vengeance surged forward, cutting through the Zalari fleet like a predator among prey. The Zalari flagship, Dominator's Wrath, was unlike the others, larger, more heavily armored, and commanded directly by Lord High Warden Arvel himself. It loomed at the center of the enemy formation, but even Arvel now understood what he was facing. "Fall back," he roared, his scaled hand slamming against the command console. "Reposition the fleet. We must regroup." "But my lord," a Zalari officer stammered. "Do as I command." Arvel snapped, his eyes flaring with rage. He had heard the reports, dismissed the warnings. The humans were supposed to be primitive, nothing more than a backwater species clinging to their fragile world. And yet, here they were, carving through the finest warships in the Dominion's fleet as if they were nothing more than space debris. The Vengeance was a weapon of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, and Arvel knew if they didn't stop it here, they never would. "Prepare the Annihilator cannons," he ordered. "If we are to fall, we will take these humans with us." Back aboard the Vengeance, Carter studied the tactical display. The Zalari were trying to regroup, forming a defensive line around their flagship. He almost admired their resilience. Almost. "Sir, the enemy flagship is charging a massive energy weapon," Hayes reported. "Estimated output, it's off the charts." Carter clenched his jaw. So the Zalari were done playing games. "Good," he said. "So are we. Deploy the Odin Protocol." The bridge fell silent. Even Hayes turned to look at him, eyes widening slightly. The Odin Protocol was Earth's greatest military secret, something even the Galactic Council had only heard whispers about. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an extinction-level deterrent. But the Zalari had already shown humanity what they were capable of. They had slaughtered human colonies, massacred innocent civilians as a warning. And now they would see what it meant to provoke Earth. A moment later, deep within the bowels of the Vengeance, the Odin payload was armed. "Target the flagship," Carter ordered. "Fire." From the underbelly of the Vengeance, a single warhead detached, moving slowly at first, then accelerating at impossible speed. It wasn't a traditional missile, nor an energy weapon. It was something far worse, an experimental weapon powered by a miniature singularity. The Odin warhead struck the Dominator's Wrath dead center. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to twist as the singularity detonated, tearing through the enemy ship with a force that defied the laws of physics. The Dominator's Wrath didn't explode, it collapsed in on itself, pulled into a point of infinite gravity before vanishing entirely. One moment it was the Zalari's pride and glory, the next it was gone, erased from existence. The remaining Zalari ships panicked. Their flagship had been their rallying point, their symbol of strength. Now all that remained was fear. "They're retreating," Hayes said, her voice quiet, almost in disbelief. Carter exhaled slowly. "Let them go." The message was clear, humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never forget. The battlefield had fallen into eerie silence. The Zalari fleet, once the mightiest force in this sector of the galaxy, was now shattered, its remnants scattering into the void like frightened insects. The Vengeance stood alone, surrounded by the wreckage of its enemies. On the bridge, Admiral Carter took a slow breath, his mind already calculating the next steps. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. The Zalari wouldn't forget this humiliation. They would be back, and next time they would bring everything they had. "Status report," Carter ordered. "All systems nominal," Lieutenant Hayes responded, her fingers flying over her console. "Shields at 89%, minor hull damage, nothing critical. Odin payload successful, 0 residual anomalies detected. Casualties minimal, a few minor injuries in engineering, but all crew accounted for." Carter nodded. "Good. Damn good." The bridge crew remained silent for a moment, letting the weight of their victory settle. They had just done the impossible, they had faced down an empire and sent it running. But Carter knew better than to celebrate. War wasn't won in a single battle. "Admiral," Commander Patel spoke up, eyes fixed on the long-range scanners, "I'm picking up multiple incoming signatures. New contacts, not Zalari." Carter's jaw tightened. "Identification?" Patel worked quickly, then his face went pale. "Sir, it's the Galactic Council." The Galactic Council, the so-called Keepers of Peace, a coalition of the most powerful alien species in the galaxy, dedicated to maintaining balance and ensuring that no one race became too dominant. They had ignored Earth for centuries, considering humanity too primitive to be worth their attention. Until now. Carter clenched his fists. "They don't come when our colonies burn. They don't interfere when the Zalari slaughter our people. But the moment we fight back." "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 20 capital-class vessels," Patel said grimly. "They're holding position just outside the debris field." A moment later, a transmission request lit up the main display. "Open the channel," Carter ordered. The image that appeared was of a creature Carter had encountered only once before, High Chancellor Velith of the Galactic Council. Tall and elegant with shimmering blue skin and piercing silver eyes, Velith radiated the quiet authority of a being who had ruled for centuries. "Admiral Elias Carter," Velith said, his voice as smooth as flowing water. "It seems humanity has made quite the statement today." Carter didn't move, didn't blink. "We defended ourselves." Velith tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "A single ship annihilating a Zalari fleet? That is not mere defense. That is a declaration of power." Carter let the words hang in the air. He wasn't going to deny it. "The Zalari murdered thousands of our people," he said finally. "Where was the council then?" Velith sighed, as if Carter's words pained him. "Politics is complicated. We do not involve ourselves in every conflict. There are rules, Admiral." Carter's expression darkened. "Rules that allow genocide?" Velith didn't answer. Carter leaned forward. "You're not here to help us. You're here because humanity just changed the balance of power, and that terrifies you. Velitha's silver eyes flickered. We are here to ensure peace, Admiral. Carter gave a dry chuckle. By threatening us? Velitha's voice remained calm. By making sure humanity understands the consequences of its actions. The meaning was clear. This wasn't a friendly meeting, this was a warning. Carter straightened. Humanity has learned many things in the past few years, Chancellor. The most important. We stand alone, and we survive. For the first time, Velitha's expression faltered, just a fraction. Be careful, Admiral. Even the strongest species can fall. Carter met his gaze, unflinching. So can the Council. The transmission cut off. Silence returned to the bridge. Hayes exhaled. Sir, what now? Carter stared at the holographic display, watching the Council's ships hold their position. We go home, he said finally. But make no mistake, this isn't over. Humanity had revealed its strength, and now the entire galaxy was watching. As the Vengeance turned away from the wreckage-strewn battlefield, the crew remained silent. There was no celebration, no cheers for their victory, only the cold realization that they had just painted a target on humanity's back. Admiral Carter sat in his command chair, eyes locked on the swirling void beyond the viewscreen. He knew the Galactic Council wouldn't attack them, not yet. They would posture, they would threaten, but they wouldn't make the first move. Not when the Vengeance had just demonstrated its terrifying power. But the Zalari would be back. Set course for Earth, Carter ordered. Maximum burn. The engines roared to life, and the Vengeance surged forward, leaving behind the ruins of the Zalari fleet. But even as they moved away, Carter knew this was only the beginning. Back on Earth, the world was already in an uproar. The battle had been transmitted across the system, and though the full details were classified, the people of Earth knew one thing: humanity had struck back. The fear that had lingered since the Zalari's first attack was gone, replaced by something far more powerful: defiance. In the towering halls of the United Earth government, debates raged. Politicians argued over what humanity's next move should be. Some called for diplomacy, for negotiations with the Council to avoid an all-out war. Others demanded retaliation, the complete annihilation of the Zalari before they could recover. And then there were the pragmatists, the ones who understood the truth: Earth was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies. If humanity wanted to survive, it would have to do more than fight. It would have to evolve. 3 days later, the Vengeance arrived in Earth's orbit. Carter stood at the forward observation deck, looking down at the blue marble that was home. It had been years since he'd last set foot on the planet, years since he had felt anything but the cold steel of warships beneath his boots. But there was no time for sentiment. Admiral, came a voice behind him. Commander Patel. The Council is demanding an emergency summit. They want to discuss limitations. Carter smirked. Of course they did. The moment humanity proved itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's strongest, the rules suddenly needed to change. What's the President's stance? She's cautious but firm. She wants you there. Carter nodded. Then let's give the Council something to talk about. The Galactic Council convened in neutral space, a grand station orbiting a dying sun. Carter had been here once before, years ago, back when humanity had still been naive enough to believe in diplomacy. Now he walked the polished halls with the measured confidence of a man who knew he belonged. Inside the great chamber, the council members waited, dozens of species, each seated in their respective sections, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely contained hostility. At the center, on the highest platform, sat Chancellor Velith. Admiral Carter, Velith greeted, his tone carefully controlled. Humanity has made quite the impression. Carter took his seat, leaning forward slightly. You wanted to talk, so talk. A murmur rippled through the chamber at his bluntness, but Velith remained composed. The Council acknowledges humanity's advancements. However, we must also acknowledge the danger such advancements present. We cannot allow unchecked militarization to disrupt the balance of the galaxy. Carter let out a dry laugh. Balance? Where was this concern when the Zalari wiped out an entire human colony? Velith's expression didn't change. The Council regrets those events, but retribution cannot be the foundation of diplomacy. Carter's eyes narrowed. Then what can? Velith leaned forward. Cooperation. Humanity must agree to limitations, no further warship production beyond what is necessary for defense, no deployment of singularity-based weapons, and no independent military expansion beyond your system. The chamber fell silent. The Council wasn't offering peace, they were offering containment. Carter looked around the room, meeting the eyes of alien representatives who had once dismissed humanity as irrelevant. Now they were afraid. Good. You want us to stand still while our enemies prepare for round 2, Carter said. That's not happening. Velith's expression darkened. Then humanity will find itself alone, Admiral. Carter stood. We always have been. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Humanity would not be controlled, and if the galaxy wanted war, they would find out just how far Earth was willing to go. Back aboard the Vengeance, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical map hovering before him. The Galactic Council thought they could contain humanity with words, with veiled threats wrapped in diplomacy. But Carter knew better. The Zalari were already regrouping, and the Council's so-called neutrality wouldn't last. Sir, encrypted transmission from UEEG Command, Patel reported. Carter nodded. Patch it through. A hologram flickered to life, revealing President Evelyn Marshall. Her sharp green eyes locked onto Carter, her face lined with exhaustion, but her voice carried the weight of a leader who knew the storm was coming. You've made quite the impact, Admiral, she said. They were never going to let us expand, Carter replied. The moment we proved ourselves, the Council started looking for ways to keep us unleashed. Marshall exhaled slowly. We have a problem. Intelligence reports that the Zalari are mobilizing. Their losses hit them hard, but they're calling in reinforcements from their outer colonies. The Dominion is preparing for full-scale war. Carter expected as much. The Zalari wouldn't accept defeat, their pride wouldn't allow it. And now they had a reason to rally their forces, to destroy the upstart species that had humiliated them. We need to strike first, Carter said. Take the fight to them before they're ready. Marshall's gaze sharpened. That's exactly what I was thinking. We can't sit back and wait for the hammer to drop. But this isn't just about the Zalari anymore. The Council is watching, waiting for an excuse to intervene. Carter crossed his arms. Then we give them something they won't expect. Marshall leaned forward. What do you have in mind? Carter turned to Patel. Bring up the Kepler Black site. A new hologram appeared, a classified research station orbiting the frozen world of Kepler 62F, deep in human-controlled space. It was one of Earth's most secretive projects, a facility dedicated to developing weapons and technology that even the Council feared. Marshall's eyes narrowed. That project is still experimental, Carter. Are you telling me it's ready? Carter smirked. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be terrifying. 2 weeks later, humanity made its move. A fleet of Earth's most advanced warships, led by the Vengeance, slipped into Zalari-controlled space under the cover of subspace distortion fields. The Zalari had been preparing for an invasion, reinforcing their borders, deploying fleets along expected attack vectors. They never expected humanity to bypass their defenses entirely. The Vengeance emerged from subspace directly over Zalari Prime, their home world. Alarms blared across the planet as defensive batteries powered up, but it was already too late.